Welcome to the Heal Yourself podcast, where we dive deep into all things healing. I'm Denise, a speech language pathologist and a self-love coach for adults and teens.
And I'm Kira, a traditional naturopath and functional nutritionist, and we are here to guide you through the transformative process of healing your body, mind, and soul.
From the latest in functional medicine to nurturing your relationship with yourself, healing trauma, and even transforming your money story, we're here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to create lasting change.
So whether you're looking to heal physically, emotionally, or spiritually, join us as we explore the many paths to wholeness and wellness. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I am here with special guest Vika Rutkowski. I told you I was going to mess.
You did a great job. Vika Rutkowski.
Thank you. Sadly, Denise is not here with us right now, so the two of us will chat. So let me tell you a little bit about Vika. We met, it's been about a year now. We met doing a business mentorship program, so we're pretty similar. I love Vika.
Aw, the love is shared back.
Oh, thanks. So telling you a little bit about her, she's an integrative health practitioner and a digestive and immune health coach. She helps motivated women overcome digestive complaints, hormone, and autoimmune symptoms through a root cause approach. And I think I love you because we're so similar. And for us, it's not just like, hey, take a test and here's 20 supplements. I'll see you in a few months. Good luck with that. It's so much different.
Yeah.
I want to just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your story. Like, how did you even get into this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story is kind of interesting because I feel like it had bumps along the way. So I initially started having weird symptoms when I was in high school. Shortly after birth control, started having stomach aches, bad mood. Mostly it was the stomach problem. So I thought I had maybe actually more of a reproductive issue because my mom was having fibroids at the time. So I was like, maybe I'm having fibroids. I have really bad pain and it's all the time and it's worse than it should be. And I kind of just kept getting dismissed. And then it kind of got worse in college. And it got to a point where I was crying myself to sleep. The pain was so bad. I was going to a lot of doctors. I was going to GI specialists. They're like, you're too young to have problems. This isn't that big of a deal. Go home, or you're healthy. Or then they noticed that I had really low pulse and they started putting me on a Holter to check my cardiac function. They noticed I had very frequent PVCs. They're like, oh, actually we should do an ablation surgery or give you this medication. My parents were still helping me out at the time. They're like, what's the rate of this ablation surgery? They're like 60%. They're like, okay, that's 50-50. No, thanks. We're not doing that. I tried the medication, but they warned me right away. They're like, a lot of college students don't like it because it makes you very tired. I'm like, well, I can't be very tired when I have school to do. And I was kind of a overachiever and stuff. So I was like, I did try it, but it did not help because it actually made me feel heart symptoms versus before I didn't have any. I was always coming in for gut issues and I was just always dismissed. And then I found a book called The Crazy Sexy Diet, and it was by this woman called Chris Carr, and she had cancer and she went into, I don't think she went into remission, but she slowed down the progression of her cancer with diet and lifestyle. And that was step number one, where I really started getting into it. A lot of my pain went away within 21 days. I later on went back to my home country, which is Belarus. We got allergy testing. I was allergic to cow and goat milk. We didn't test gluten at the time, but I did eventually figure out I had gluten issues. We also figured out I had hypothyroidism. There was just a lot going on. And so they gave me a lot of holistic support. They gave me vitamins. They talked about lifestyle. They talked about don't do these kind of workouts. These kind of workouts will be better. Taking care of yourself, resting more, because with thyroid problems, you have to kind of just monitor your stress levels and stuff like that. And then I went back to the United States and they again threw that out the window and we're like, let's go back to this heart condition we need to worry about. So I realized I'm not going to get a lot of help there. Eventually I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's And then when I really got into this world was when I had my first child and he developed a regression around like between 1 and 2 years old. He lost speech. He could speak not a whole lot because 1-year-olds don't speak a lot, but he could understand Russian. He would respond to me in Russian and English, and then he lost all of that. He stopped saying mama. He stopped saying papa. All these things. And I was like, and then when we'd go to the doctor, they would give us really bad advice or no advice and say, this is just temporary. It's going to like fix itself. No worries about it. And then I was like, this just can't be our only options. And when I got married with my husband, he had a holistic doctor, which is a whole nother story. I mean, if he could go on your podcast, that would be even cooler. He would be the best mindset coach for anyone, and his story is absolutely insane. It's like very like overcoming a lot of difficult emotions, but it came with a health journey as well.
Yeah.
But he had a holistic doctor, so I went to him for my problems, and then I started digging into functional medicine, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a whole nother world to this. So there's just so many other options, and I started understanding how the body works on a different level. And it really is the whole system. You do need to calm your system down so it's able to heal. You need to see what's going on in the gut, why something happened. And even like, you're seeing people who have like gut issues from like a pinched nerve or from a traumatic brain injury. So it's like so many things can set off that your body system of like, oh, I'm under stress. And once your body's under stress for whatever reason, the gut starts to get affected, and it kind of has like an effect throughout your entire system, your immune system, your gut, your hormones, your mental health, everything. So I started looking into that, and it was for my son and for myself, and then ended up being for my family. And once I realized how far you can go, I wanted to start spreading the word and helping other people as well. So that was kind of my story in a nutshell.
Well, and I mean, there's a couple of things that jumped out to me. Our stories are similar, right? Because I struggled with digestive issues for decades, and the same type of thing. Like the gaslighting is a real thing. And so,
oh, yeah.
For listeners right now, please keep advocating for yourselves. You're not crazy. Like, unfortunately, if there's not something that pops out immediately out of range on blood work, a lot of times it's dismissed, or, like you're too young. But then, as soon as you hit a certain age, well, it's just because you're older, or it's just because you have kids. I'm like, stop giving excuses and start digging. And it's frustrating.
Absolutely.
And it's sad that you had to go elsewhere to get answers, but that's why we do what we do, because
well, and it's happening all the time. I would say
Yeah.
anyone who goes through this journey is going to have some sort of medical PTSD. And it's crazy because now when I get clients coming in, it's like almost that PTSD is re-triggered because they're having the exact same stories. They're either told they're not that unhealthy compared to their other patients, and they're like, my body is deteriorating, something is seriously wrong, or they're just getting a bunch of diagnosis and told like, go on steroids, go on this medication, it's going to be fine. And or like I've had some clients who've had surgeries and they're not getting better, and they're like just saying like, this is not working, but they're going through some pretty aggressive stuff and getting not a whole lot of help. So definitely advocate for yourself. Most of the time, if you're having physical symptoms, it's not just a mental health issue. It's not just anxiety. It's not just depression. It can come along with that sometimes because the way the body works, like you can have anxiety when you're having a gut issue or when you're under fight or flight, or you are just stressed. If you're stressed, your body's not working out. Of course, anxiety is going to go along with that. And if you're under stress for a long amount of time, your body can crash and you'll have depression. But it doesn't mean the only solution is go to a psychologist or a therapist. There's so many things involved with that. And when you're losing your health and your abilities, it's really, really scary. And I think that's like what something I wanted to mention was that shift of identity when you go through like chronic illness. A lot of people, I mean, there are kids who have chronic illness from day one, so maybe they don't have as big of a shift. But when you're getting you're developing chronic illness in that mid-age, maybe teenager, young adult, maybe even a little bit later, 30s, you go from like probably being on top of the world. We see a lot of high performers, perfectionists, like people pleasers, people who do a lot at all times. And then all of a sudden they're like, I can't do anything anymore. Like, this is really hard. Like, why can't I keep up? And then they start to guilt themselves. They start to hate themselves. And then when you add that medical gaslighting on top of it, they start to think like, maybe I am the crazy one. Maybe I am losing it. Maybe there is something wrong. And there's a couple of ways that can lead into like either just like a freeze, like at that emotional freeze where you can't do anything, or you might get stuck in victim mentality because you feel like there's, nobody hears you, nobody's listening, like nobody gets it, and you just start to be mad. And it's almost like you're going through that grieving process. There's that like denial stage where like, no, maybe I am okay. And I think that's the really beginning stages where you hear people say like, yeah, everyone has gut issues. It's not that big of a deal. And they're in denial that it's actually a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the anger at yourself, that why is my body not working, or anger at doctors, like you're not helping me. What's wrong with you? Like bargaining,
Yeah.
asking more from doctors, asking more from yourself. Maybe if I just push myself or push through it, it'll get better. Maybe if I wait, it'll be fine. Then again, that depression, feeling trapped, and then acceptance, like this is where I'm at. And the only person that can help me is me.
Yeah.
So it's up to me now to start figuring out how to do something. And some people get stuck in victim mentality and they're not able to get to the other side of like, okay, how can I empower myself? What can I do to like nourish my body, nourish my soul, bring back my capacity for life? And it really has to, you almost have to go through those stages and understand what happened before that got you here, and what do you need now that might be different from what you had before to get you to the other side.
Yeah. And Denise and I talk about that a lot, and we're going to continue to weave it through of like, how do we get out of victim mentality and how do we start to view this as opportunity, which might be
Absolutely.
triggering for people to hear, right? Like when I was in the thick of my issues, if you told me, hey, this is a learning opportunity, I would have been like, screw you.
Yeah.
But it like, I would not be where I'm at right now had I not gone through that. So when we
Same.
can start to shift that just a little bit, it also starts to shift our identity and symptoms do change. And that was actually,
Absolutely.
that was one thing I want to ask you about. So
Yeah.
you mentioned identity, and I love talking about things on the identity level, but how do we start to shift our identity then to an empowered one when we start struggling?
So I love that you're asking that. I think like I said, going through the stages of grief, like each stage has its value. Sometimes you have to be angry for a little bit. Sometimes you have to be in denial. But I think where you really start to see that shift is when you start to let yourself feel safe, seen, heard, and safe. And sometimes you can get that from another person if you're lucky enough to have a practitioner or a friend. For me, my husband was a huge, advocate for me. He really made me feel seen, heard, and safe. So was my sister, because everyone else around me was like, no, you're fine. Like my parents, when I was like breaking down, like at my peak of symptoms, were like, you just got to study more. Like I just kept pushing and pushing, pushing. So if you can't find that for yourself from somebody else, you have to like create it internally. Like you have to start telling yourself, I'm okay. I trust my body. This is real. I have to start believing myself. And I think another way to do that when you don't have any outside sources to lean on that gives you that feeling of safety and feeling heard is reading stories. Read stories about people who have overcome these issues. Find a community you can, and these days we're so lucky to have access to communities online, like the internet, finding other holistic practitioners. They usually have some sort of community that you can join, or just being involved in their reels and their comments, finding other like-minded people. Like for me, I loved being able to get into this world and meet more people who have had similar stories, because that's when you finally are like, oh, wow, this is real. I'm not crazy. I'm seen. I'm heard. I'm safe here. This is a very safe space, and people get what I'm going through and what the journey is going to look like, because it's going to be bumpy. So you have to know that first before anything. And this is what I've noticed works really well with my clients, is making them feel safe. Like you are safe here. You're allowed to feel all the feelings of frustration, pain, hurt. You're allowed to be frustrated with your body. I will never say you're a hypochondriac. I will always believe what you're going through, but we'll have to look at unique ways to tackle it. And it might not look like things you've seen before. And it's usually not a quick fix. So it's just that like opening the door that this is a safe journey, and you're heard, you're seen, and you're safe here, I think that's when they start to be able to shift their identity. Because before people feel seen, heard, safe, they are on the defense. They're like, anything you say, they can't hear you because they're so stressed, they can't relax, that they're going to fight it. And that's when they're angry. That's when they don't believe you. That's why when you say something like you said, like, this is an opportunity for growth, which I absolutely believe it is. It was for me. Like, I'm so grateful because I have developed a different level of empathy and understanding for people I never would have had if I didn't go through this. I also wouldn't have questioned a lot of things that were normal in our society if I didn't go through this. I also wouldn't have improved my life, my health. And it starts once you improve your health, you start to help everyone around you. My family members, people who are not even my clients. We're talking about family around me, my husband, my husband's family, my family, like my family. Yeah, it's a ripple effect. And you're able to do that. And it's such a beautiful experience. So it is an incredible learning opportunity for growth. But you have to go through all the grieving stages first to get there. And you have to be uh, just kind to yourself throughout the journey and find people who can also be on it with you.
Yeah. And I think you said something important there, and I want to touch on that. So finding people going through a similar journey is important, but I'm going to throw in a caveat here because there's something that I see. You want to find people who are in a similar place, but who have started that identity shift, who believe that healing is possible, because
100%.
I can't tell you how many people I've seen get stuck in victim mentality because they join a Facebook group where all people do is complain all day long about how miserable they are, how bad their symptoms are. And I'm like, okay, but that's not helping either.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I'm so glad you brought it up because I've joined Hashimoto's, autoimmune, like gut health problems, autism groups, and
mold
they
groups.
love.
I was in mold groups. I'm like, get me out of here.
Yeah, the mold group. Like they get stuck, and I'm like, okay, mold is absolutely real, and you can get toxic effects. But the whole point is to make your body a little bit more resilient to mold and know how to handle it moving forward. We're always going towards empowerment. So if anything makes you feel disempowered, that's not the right group for you. You do not want to get stuck. When you get stuck, you start to lean into that victim mentality and identity a lot more. And that is not where you want to be if your ultimate goal is health, happiness, and bettering your life. And I know for people who are in the bottom of their, of what it feels like the bottom, and they don't feel good, they feel like it's not going to get better. I promise it will. You just have to start believing it and taking baby steps. And the littlest step might be just trusting your body that it's trying to help you. It's trying to send signals that something's off, and you will figure it out. You will.
And you also, it's funny, I'm going to shift it a little bit, but you talked about finding practitioners and their stories, but the word story popped out at me because that is a big piece of shifting our identity.
Yeah.
When we're looking at the identity level, a lot of times we are telling ourselves stories that don't serve us. Like, I'm never going to get better. I would tell myself that, or I'm always going to feel this way, or I guess this is just my normal. You can start to shift those stories. Now, you can't tell yourself, one day I think I'm going to die, and the next day, like, this is the best life ever. That's probably a little unbelievable, but like, shift the stories and start to have a conversation, start to coach yourself. Is that true? Is that story true? If not, can I shift it to something that's going to better serve me? Because that is going to shift your identity as well.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought it up. And I'm sure you do it a lot because hypnosis and things like that. And I'll mention something I've even done for myself and I've told my clients. So like Kira said, it's always about shifting the stories to something that's believable. So realistically, if you hate your life, you hate yourself, you hate your body, saying, I love my body, I love myself, you probably don't feel that. But something that I do, I love to do the tapping method, and I'll tap my shoulder and say something that I'm working towards. So I'll say, I'm working towards loving my body more. I'm working towards finding my worth. I'm working towards feeling the best in my skin. I'm working towards, developing more strength, because that is believable. You can always work towards something. And that can also mean that maybe tomorrow you feel a little bit better, but maybe the next day you have a crash. You know what I mean? Because healing does come with ups and downs. It's not like just all the way up. But if you tell yourself believable that you're always working towards something, then you can't argue with that.
Yeah.
You can't tell your body, no, you're not working towards it. Say, okay, today I worked a little bit less towards it, but tomorrow I'm going to get back on the horse and try again, you know?
Yeah. Because that
So
we
it's like,
can't just roll over and die. And I see people
yeah,
like just give up. I'm like, no, just start to shift the
yeah,
stories a little bit, because as
yes,
soon as
just a
you
little
roll
bit.
over and say, this is it, you're right. You are
It's
done.
true. Your body starts to shut down and
Yeah.
believes that. And I'm sure maybe you've been in that position, but I have too. There have been moments where like I remember when I felt so unheard and I felt so drained in my body and I was like, this just can't be it. If this is it and everyone's telling me that I'm just working hard enough and my body is crashing, I did want to be done. I would be like, please, like I remember when I was in high school, I'd write in my journal saying I felt so trapped and I would write the same thing once a year saying like, please just give me cancer and let me pass away like nicely. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
nicely.
quietly, because I didn't want to make a stink or something. But it's like, understand that that might also be part of your journey, but it doesn't mean that it won't get better. You really
Yeah.
have to start telling yourself, I'm ready. I'm ready now to shift my identity. I'm ready to move towards a different direction. Even if you felt like there was no hope for you, there is hope for absolutely everyone. You just have to open up that door, even if it's like just a tiny little bit. You know, dip
Yeah.
your toes into believing that there's a better life out there for you. Because I'm telling you, everyone who didn't believe at one point, the minute they started believing, things started massively shifting.
Yep.
And then a year, 2, 3, you look back, you're like, whoa, I didn't realize how much progress I've had just because I took that leap of believing in myself.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you about this, because
Yeah.
I know you've worked with a lot of women with chronic illness and you've been there yourself.
Yeah.
What are some common personality traits of these
Yeah.
women specifically who have chronic illness?
So
Because this is going to tie
definitely
into
like,
it.
yeah, so there's like a couple of buckets I see. Like, so one is definitely like the high achievers, high performers, like very intense thinkers. They overanalyze a lot of things. And because they do all that, they carry a lot of guilt and they try to do it all. And when they do it all, it's like you're suppressing a lot of your emotions, you're suppressing a lot of your own needs, and you don't know how to handle that. And when you do that, it kind of affects your nervous system and it puts you into that sympathetic mode, right? Because you're always stressed because you're not relaxing because you're trying to do everything and be everything for everyone. So that's a really common bucket. And even if you look in research, they see that a lot, like high neuroticism, tendency towards suppressing emotions, sometimes a pattern of putting others' needs before their own. And this is also why you see a lot of women who have autoimmune rather than men who have autoimmune, because it is like a female tendency, like
Yeah.
that motherly instinct. And then the other bucket I see a lot is like neurodivergence. So people with like ADHD, autism, and maybe that's partially a methylation issue. But I also like some people do, there are some theories that I don't think every case of ADHD is like this, but some cases of ADHD might actually be more of like a trauma response from childhood because you have that hypervigilance where you're hyper focusing, really fixated on something, and then dissociation when you don't pay attention. Obviously, that's not perfect because there's other things that could be involved. There could be brain fog. It could genuinely be a personality trait, and that might not always be a bad thing, you know. But I do think there's that bucket as well where you see a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I completely agree. Grief. I'm going to throw out, I will say perfectionism. People that get stuck in fear and like chronic worriers.
Yes,
Same
that's
thing.
so common. And that's usually, yeah, perfectionism, high achievers, high performers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge because you can basically never achieve enough and then you can never relax. If you
Yeah.
can't relax, how can you heal your body? That's when it does all of its recovery, immune support, you know, the your microbiome is very impacted by your stress levels, by your nervous system. So if you're always on that high end of things, then it's going to be hard to let your body function properly.
Yeah. And that goes back to identity again, too,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yep.
Denise and I have chatted about this. So plug for our emotion episode, which I think was like episode 4. Go listen to that. And we talk about perfectionism and boundaries too, but it all rolls in. And that's a piece of a lot of our identities that for years, I mean, heck, decades, I prided myself on being a perfectionist. I was definitely a people pleaser. I definitely lacked boundaries. And I have had to work on that to slowly shift my identity and to
Oh yeah.
change those stories of like, you don't need to please everyone. It's not selfish if you put yourself first and
Oh
like
yeah.
all of that.
Yeah, I can relate because I took a lot of pride in being miserable. I'm like, I can take torture more than anybody
Yeah.
else. You know, I can beat my body to a pulp, but I'll get everything done that I need to. Definitely had like, even though I wouldn't call myself a perfectionist because I was always kind of a messy person, but like a chaotic person, impulsive person, but I was very, very high achieving. Like I wanted to do it all. I wanted, you know, to have the best social life, have the best schoolwork, do all the extracurriculars, do all of this. And like I said, when I was in college and my body was breaking down and I was getting less sleep, the advice I got from my family was along the same lines. Well, keep working harder. Your body can. My mom would always tell me, like, well, when I was in college, I thought I had brain cancer, but I got my PhD. You know what I mean? So it's like that's the message I kept getting. And even now, like it's so easy for me to go back into that. I'm like, I want to push myself a little bit more. But the problem is I know where that lands. And it's like you have to listen to your body. And there's seasons for everything. Sometimes there are seasons where like life is a little crazy. You have to do a little more. Maybe you won't get great sleep for a day or two or a couple, but you have to get back on the horse and get back to a healthy routine. And you also have to know what are those like non-negotiables in your life. Like you have to create them because I'm guessing people who developed chronic illness midlife did not have them before. They were like, I'm going to just do it all or I'm going to do whatever everyone else wants. You have to create non-negotiables for yourself for your health. So if it's sleep, like if sleep is the, which it should be for most people, you should be getting enough sleep most days, maybe not every day, but most days, you know, sleep could be a big one, you know, doing something for your mental health to keep you sane and regulated, doing something, you know, for your physical health, whether it's movement, diet, whatever, you have to figure out, and this is a personal journey to everyone, what are your non-negotiables to keep you balanced throughout your days, throughout your weeks. And that way, when you have an off day, you can bounce back a little bit faster.
Yeah. Gosh, this has been such a good conversation. I feel like there's been like so many tips thrown in
I
here too
know.
on shifting identity and things to focus on. But I
Yeah.
want to kind of turn things a little bit like what was most impactful in your healing journey so that we can give some additional tools to our listeners. And I know this is going to be different, right? Like I talk about that just
Yeah.
because these three things were amazing for you doesn't mean they're going to be amazing for everyone.
Right.
But sometimes an aha or a light bulb will go off in someone's head.
I'll give you a couple of things. So, like, something that I think could help most people in a similar situation as me is definitely like diet, sleep, slowing down, rest. Like there's a point that I was really into yoga that was amazing for my nervous system, liver health, like looking into that, looking into like what holistic practitioners call drainage pathways. Those are all the basics. Something that was very specific to me and maybe this is something for people to think about too, is that like honestly marrying my husband was such an impactful thing for my journey because like I said, he had his own health journey. He also used integrative doctors and it gave me a lot of space of safety and hope where I did not get that before from anyone else. Like he made me feel seen, heard, safe when I felt like I was being lazy. He's like, no, you just don't feel good. That's okay. People have bad days. You know, I felt like it was okay to slow down. It was okay to take care of myself. So maybe that is a tip for people to think about what are the people you're surrounding yourself by. If you're not married, then maybe being choosy about what kind of partner you pick. Like how do you feel when you're together? Do you guys lift each other up? But the same should be happening with your friends. Do you guys lift each other up? Or are you a little misaligned? Because sometimes it's not about like somebody has to be good or great or better. It's about like whether you guys are on the same page and whether your journeys align. And you want to find people who align and make it easy for you to be your best self. So
And
that is a big part of my journey.
Yeah, sorry, this is a podcast. We interrupt each other. But the finding people that lift you up is huge. And this can be a hard one. This is where
Yeah.
boundaries come in. This is where the people pleasing rears its
Yeah.
ugly head, because I'm sure you've had the same, but clients over the years are like, my partner doesn't support me eating this way. They just
Yeah.
want to go eat XYZ, but I can't eat those things right now. I realize that they don't make me feel good. Boundaries, like you've got to
Yeah.
put those in place then. If your partner loves and supports you, then they're going to be on board, but you've got to advocate for yourself again. It's not just advocating at the
Absolutely.
doctor's office, but with family, with friends. I mean, we're holiday season here, and a lot of times people will go to family members' houses and they're like, I can't eat anything. Like, I can't tell you how many clients have told me over the years,
Yeah.
I went to my mother-in-law's, we had Christmas over there and there wasn't anything I could eat. Advocate for yourself. I don't care if you feel like you're the crazy person, embrace it. Like, you're
Yeah.
doing it for you and for your health. You're not a crazy person by saying like, hey, I can't eat all this highly processed food, or right now my body's not responding well to gluten. Are you going to have anything that's gluten-free? Like, use it as an opportunity to educate. But so many get stuck in, oh my gosh, I can't say anything. They're going to make me feel like I'm needy. And
Or weird. Yeah.
yes,
Well,
that's huge.
Well, that's also that shift of identity. Because in the
Yeah.
beginning, when I did that, everyone were confused. They're like, "What are you talking about? Like, you eat like this?" Like my dad told me I will never get married if I have a restrictive
Oh
diet
my gosh.
because men won't want me. And I was like, "Well, Dad, the other option is like I die because
Yeah.
like things are not going well. And when I eat like this, I can get through my day. Like I feel good." But that's where you have to, like, the beginning might be a little rocky, but you know what? People get used to it. And once they get used to it, give it a couple months, a year, everyone knows you as that person that's, might bring your own food or might, you might be the one eating salad. Like, if you can also prep ahead of time and eat a meal before you go somewhere. Like, there's so many ways to do it, and there's ways to make it a little bit less awkward. Like, some things I will say, be like, oh, I feel better when I eat this kind of food. You don't even have to villainize like, oh, gluten's the devil. Like, I could never eat that. You could be like, oh, you know what? My body feels good. And you can even make a joke out of it and be like, oh, you don't want to see me after I eat that. Then none of us will have fun. There are ways to make it like really like lighthearted and not, because I think the reason why it gets awkward is because somebody else feels like, oh, then I'm the bad guy because I didn't make you anything, you know what I mean, that you want. And then they get defensive and be like, why are you doing that? Or they assume that you're judging them because they're eating sugar or processed food. And you're like, oh, it's nothing to do with you. This is just like, like I'm going through a healing journey and I haven't been feeling good. And this makes me feel a lot better, and I would bring your own stuff. Or like I said, eat before and just take it as like a social opportunity instead of a food one. That's what I did for the longest time. I would eat before and I would go see people and just like have something to drink, maybe a couple of veggies or whatever they had, and just use that as like, oh, I just want to bond with them and socialize. And this is not where I'm going to get most of my nutrition because I can't expect that from them because they don't know what I need.
Yep.
They just don't know,
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's no judgment. It's just, this is what I need. My boundaries are here.
Yeah.
I'm doing what's best for me. I'm not just going to roll over and say, okay, you guys are going to have food that's going to make me feel awful for the next 48 hours, but I'll just eat it. Don't do it.
Yeah. And with your husband, you do, like, when it's husbands or like, immediate family, you do have to have some boundaries, and it can be a little bit awkward because you are closer to them. But I would still, like I said, find resources, like communities where people get it, because you still need someone who gets it. Because then otherwise you start questioning yourself, like, maybe I am crazy, maybe I should stop. But then you start seeing results and other people like see the results with you. And then it's a lot easier. It's always a lot easier when you have someone to lean on and you have support. But it doesn't always have to be your husband or your parents or your sibling. It could be someone else. And you could still come back to your husband and be like, well, my girlfriend is loving it too. You know what I mean? And be like, you should try it with us. I feel amazing. And then sometimes, it's like a little whisper, a little nudge. They start noticing how great you're feeling, how your digestive is going smoother, how like you have less aches and pains, how you have more energy. And they're like, maybe I should try that too.
Maybe that McDonald's I ate yesterday wasn't serving me.
Yeah. So you never know. You just gotta, keep going and keep trying and not give up on yourself. There's never a reason to give up on yourself.
I think that's been the theme. Like, yes, we talked about identity and some tips, but advocating for yourself and knowing that like there is always hope. And actually somebody sent me a text yesterday, and is ready to, we have our first appointment next week, but I was looking at her labs and she's like, is there hope? I'm like, there's always hope. There's always hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And think about it this way, even if you get 20% better than you were before, that can be huge. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's like you got to celebrate every bit of progress because I feel like sometimes it's like when you're on a healing journey, you can get stuck on symptom. And even though you got rid of, let's say, 80% of your symptoms, you're like, I have to do more cleanses. I have to
Yep.
do more healing. And you're like, wait a second. Can we celebrate where you're at now? You don't have any gut problems anymore. You don't have any aches and pains anymore. Like, you don't need to be Superman 24/7 because now you're going back to like trying to be a
Uh-huh.
perfectionist again. So it's like
Yeah.
if you had that, then you can get stuck in a new way of the same thing, really.
Yeah, so true. So before we wrap it up, do you have any final thoughts? Anything, and I'm putting you on the spot here. You might not,
Yeah.
and that's totally fine, but any other things you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I'll just give some like summary points. So like if you're in a difficult situation, the first thing I want you to focus on is developing safety within your body. If you can't get it from your outside environment, start creating it for yourself. You have to start telling yourself, I trust my body. I trust my intuition. I'm going to listen inward instead of listening outward because you're going to hear a lot of noise from the outside and it won't always serve you. And sometimes it's not their fault. It's just because they're giving you based on their experience what works for them, but that doesn't always translate to what works best for you. So start becoming your own best friend. That's number one. Second thing is focus on nourishment. Anything you want to do, you have to think about it. I'm not punishing myself. I'm not taking away. I'm not doing this aggressive thing. I'm trying to nourish my body. I'm trying to nourish my soul. I'm trying to nourish my cells. I'm trying to nourish, just everything about me. And that will get you closer to where you want to be. And then the last thing is don't get fixated on any one single thing. It's not just detox. It's not just diet. It's not just, a mental health and nervous system. It's not just, the healthcare is the problem and we are going to fixate on that. You have to look at it holistically from all perspectives and think about like, how can I just improve my life a little bit today, tomorrow, what different things you can do and you can add on, you can take out, you can swap. It's a lifelong journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So never get too dogmatic or fixated and keep learning, keep staying open. And hopefully you can be just as open to the people around you because that's really what, spreads the love, spreads the healing.
I love it. Thank you. Those were fabulous
Yeah.
tips. So if someone's looking for you, how are they going to find you?
Well, there's a couple ways you can find me on Instagram. I'm Vika Rutkowski Wellness. I also have a website called vikarutkowski.com. You could probably find me on TikTok and Facebook as well, but I'm mostly on Instagram.
Yeah, I get that one. I don't
Yeah.
even have TikTok.
Yeah, I have it somewhere and then I haven't been updating it for a while, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey, sharing some valuable tips. Go follow Vika. And then, as usual, if you enjoyed this episode, we would love the likes, the shares, the follows, all the things. And we will see you on the next episode.